episode 165, IRONMAN Maryland with Kevin Perry. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I'm talking to Kevin Perry about his recent race at IRONMAN Maryland that took place on September 29th, 2018. He had a time of 15 hours, 27 minutes, and 54 seconds. The temperature on race day was rising from 63 into the mid-70s with the wetsuit legal swim of 73 degrees. Welcome to the show, Kevin. I look forward to hearing about your race experience at Maryland.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, so what made you want to do Maryland?
So last year I actually participated in Ironman Chattanooga and had to withdraw or on the second loop, so I was about 13 miles due to injury. So I needed a redemption race.
So what happened at Chattanooga?
So about a month before Chattanooga happened, I started having some IT band and knee issues, and tried to take it easy leading into Chattanooga, and it just persisted on race day, and I got to the point about 13 miles of the finish line, getting ready to do the second loop, and ended up having to withdraw due for injury.
Wow. And the run course there is nothing to just kind of glance at. It's something that you need to prepare for.
Yeah, it was, especially on the backside of each loop, going up Barton, the hills there, going up Barton at Chattanooga. So it was definitely a tough day and very eye-opening.
Yeah, because once you get on the other side of the river, it's just hills back there.
Yes, it is, yeah. Wow. And I actually started having the knee problems at a training weekend. I was in Chattanooga and actually training, and so I had seen the hills. We rode the bike course, and I came back home, and it just persisted from there on out.
Wow. Now, how was your training going into this race versus Chattanooga? Was it any different?
Yeah, so I actually worked with a coach this whole past year. I didn't from about April to September leading up to Chattanooga. I had done some off-season stuff with a coach, but I didn't have a coach for Chattanooga. So my training was definitely a whole lot better this past year for this run.
Really? So what kind of training was this? Was it all heart rate-based, power-based? What did this look like?
We used a mixture of both, but I'd mostly say heart rate zones. We just wanted to get through the day and get it completed. So we did a lot of endurance zone 2 work.
So whenever you would use your zones, how many zones would you have? Would you have 5, 7, 10 zones? What does this look like?
We had 5. We had 5 zones set up. Some of my workouts during the week were higher zones. I may do a little bit of speed work, but my long workouts on the weekends were mostly all zone 2 endurance-based workouts.
Okay. So with heart rate, I've had some people on that have used heart rate and other fun metrics to look at. But whenever you first got into zone training, how did you set up your heart rate zones to begin with?
So basically, we did some testing there on the bike and for the treadmill. We did our normal FTP testing on the bike, and then did some endurance testing, some zone testing on the treadmill in the studio.
What did that look like?
So it's basically, the treadmill testing was a lot like, you would do with an FTP test, what's your average over this? And then he would base my heart rate zones on that testing.
Okay. So just find your max heart rate and then percentages off.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now whenever you first started your zone training with your heart rate, did you realize or did you have the epiphany that it was hard to stay in zone 2?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think I remember my first zone or long zone. I think it was a 10 or 12 miler, and it was like a zone 2 run. And I was like, man, I mean, just it I just had no realization of what it took to stay in that zone 2 for that long a period of time.
Now, whenever you first started with the zone training, how hard was it for you to actually stay in that zone 2 for even shorter times?
For shorter times on the shorter runs, it was even harder because you're so used to in a race going out and just getting it, especially if you're doing 5Ks or sprint triathlons or things like that, is you automatically you're going into those high heart rate zones and trying to get it done a whole lot faster, and so it is difficult to stay in that zone too.
Right. So how long did it actually take you to go from the frustrated part of not being able to really control your heart rate to actually going, okay, I can actually run for 30 minutes in zone 2. I can run for an hour in zone 2. When did that happen?
I'd say it probably took several months to really get comfortable running in that zone 2.
Where you could actually run and your heart rate wouldn't spike.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then when you start incorporating some hills or some elevation into it, still trying to hold those zones without your heart rate spiking even on with a little bit of elevation change. Because even though Maryland is a flat course, most people, or at least here in our area, we don't have the option to train on mostly flat surface courses. So.
Right. Now, going into this race, what did your training look like from a data perspective on a week-to-week basis?
So I would I'd probably say between 12 to 20 hours a week was what I averaged. I have a full-time job. I have 2 kids, a wife. So, just trying to fit everything I needed to fit into those 12 to 20 hours. My workouts during the week would normally be hour and a half to 2 hours long per day, and then I do my long workouts on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday. Okay,
so your longest swim, bike, and run workouts, what would that look like?
So my longest bike was a 100-mile bike in my plan. Swim, we kept the swims fairly short. Between 20, I think my longest swim was maybe 25 to 3,000 yards. So we didn't have any super long swims. And then my longest run in my plan was an 18-miler.
Okay. Now, was those 18 miles all together?
Yes. Yeah, they were together, yeah.
Okay. So knowing that you have a full-time job, a wife, 2 kids, how big of an issue is the life-work balance with training and all this other stuff that you have going on?
Luckily, I have a very supportive wife. My kids are supportive. They're a little bit older now, so they can maybe stay here by themselves for a little bit, so I can get some training done. I have a great father-in-law that anytime he needed to come over and grab the kids or whatever and allow me to get my training in, we made it work. So. Work balance, work is what it is. I will say the previous year, when I was training for Chattanooga, my work balance was way out of whack, and it was really, really difficult to get in the training that I really needed for Chattanooga.
What do you feel like was different this go round that helped you not have such conflicts?
I actually have, I work I'm a supervisor. I work in transportation industry. So sometimes we move different positions, and I was in a position where I was sitting behind a desk all day long I'd normally go in at 10 o'clock in the morning and get off at 8 o'clock at night or so. And that was every day. So I'm in a different position now where I'm not sedentary, the whole day. And now, I'm off at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it allowed me the afternoons to get my training in a lot of times before the kids even got home from school. So
wow, that's great. Now, whenever you think of the conflicts that you and your wife might have had in your training going into this race, what would that look like?
We never really had any major conflicts. I actually got her into, when I first started my, fitness journey several years ago, she had never really done any major athletics or anything. And actually I got her into running also. And her dad, he started running at 62. And So she sort of understands the conflict and understands what I need to do to get into my training. A lot of times, especially if I had a rest day, she was like, are you sure you're not supposed to be doing something, or do you have any training you need to do? So she was keeping tabs on me, making sure that I sticking to the plan as much as possible. Of course, with the kids, you try to get in, don't miss the important stuff. So, some of that stuff we'd have to work around. I'd, call or email my coach and say, hey, I need to move this workout to this, or hey, this is what I got going on. So he was pretty good about moving stuff around for me also.
Nice. And you're working with Mike Smith?
Mike Smith out of 40 Endurance, yes.
Nice. So how's your relationship with him?
We have a pretty good relationship. I gave him we sort of came up with what my goals were going into the race and what I wanted to accomplish this year. I hit him with some weird things that came up throughout training and things like that, vacations. And I was on vacation for like 2 weeks in July. So that was, leading up to, peak time when I was training. So we worked around that and had some health issues back in June, which took me out for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. So
what happened in June?
One of my warm-up races was Eagleman, which is on the same course as the half Ironman there in Maryland, and I got a real bad staph infection from the swim.
Really?
I had a really good swim, and I had these, especially on the backs of my knees. I couldn't run; it hurt to ride. But yeah, I had this real bad skin infection, and actually I started getting it. So race was this past weekend. I started getting it again, but I had already, I'd talked to my doctors previously, and so they went ahead and made sure I had the antibiotics to start fighting it as quick as possible. So it's just something that my body just doesn't like about that water. I've never had any infections or anything like that from any other swims, and talked to the race director, and nobody else had an issue with it. So it's just something, specifically, I guess, to me or whatever.
Wow. Now, going into this race, did you do a lot of bricks in training? What did that look like?
Yeah, I did a lot of bricks in training. I'd normally do probably 2 bricks a week during the week, and then most of my workouts on the weekends were bricks. So maybe a Tuesday do a ride, and then a short run, 2 or 3 miles on Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever. And then on the weekends, I'd normally do a bike run brick, and every once in a while we'd do a swim run brick. So I had a whole lot more brick workouts than I did in previous training.
Okay. Now, what workouts did you do that really gave you the confidence to go into Maryland knowing that you could not only complete the distance, but complete it with the most confidence?
One of the major, so Eagleman, I had put that on when I decided to do Maryland. That was one of my first things. I always like to see what the course looks like, whether it's going for a training weekend to the place, or I did Augusta a couple of years ago and went to the Tri-Coach Georgia's training weekend that they had several weeks prior to the race. So I always like to, if I can, see the course, be on the course, just see where some of the challenges are on the course. So that was one of my major workouts that I treated it as a workout. Going in, just seeing the course on the Eagleman course. And then we also did, with the 40 endurance team, we did a long, I guess, training day back in August here on Lake Norman and around the area. So we put in some swim time, some bike time, and run time that day. So
nice. What did that long day look like?
So we swam. So we did a little over a mile and a half swim. Ended up biking, I believe it was about 75 miles, and then ran, I believe it was 5 or 6 miles.
Wow. So what kind of nutrition are you using?
I've used the Gatorade Endurance. I like the Encore stuff. My stomach seems to handle it. I also use their Gatorade Endurance gel shots. And then I use Base Performance. I put that on, especially for my bike. I put base salts in my Gatorade bottles. And then I always have an extra vial of base salts on the bike if I have to take Gatorade from the aid stations. And I use base salts on the run also.
Okay. So you're basically just using what's on the course and supplementing your sodium intake with base.
Yep.
Okay. So the Gatorade Endurance formula recently changed from last year to this year. We got rid of the artificial flavoring. Did you notice a difference there?
I noticed a little bit of difference in the taste, but nothing as far as like any issues with, I guess the potency or having any stomach issues or GI issues with it. So
okay.
It's worked out pretty good for me.
Okay. Now, whenever you actually think of how many calories you're getting an hour, you said that you're getting in about 300 calories an hour before you started here. How did you get to this number, and what led you to think that this was good?
So we sort of broke it down. Coach, we wanted to make sure that I was getting the calories in. And then some of it was by trial and error. I'd use I tried using goos and things like that. My stomach really wouldn't, tolerate them. I know leading into Chattanooga, when I was actually on a race course, I was taking in way too much calories to begin with, going in on the bike course. And so I felt horrible. I had started having stomach issues on the bike at Chattanooga. But so we sort of downgraded, I guess, took some of the calories out of it, so I didn't get that heavy feeling on my stomach. So
okay, so
I was trialing.
At Chattanooga, how many calories per hour were you getting at Chattanooga?
So I was trying to get upwards of 400 to 500 calories an hour at Chattanooga.
Wow, that's a lot.
It was taking in way too many calories.
And with 300, I mean, just based off of all the things that I've been interviewing and talking with, 300 is about the magic number. You can go a little bit above that, be okay, depending on intensity, duration of the event. But 300 for a full, that's about where you want to be, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Like I said, it worked out pretty good.
Nice. So whenever you think about your traveling to the race, when did you start traveling to the race?
So for this race, since I'd done Eagleman, I'd sort of seen, what the area was like. My wife and kids were going with me, so I wanted to make sure that, they had a good time, there in the area. So we actually left on Wednesday. We sort of treated it as a mini vacation. Left on Wednesday before the race. The race is on Saturday. Checked in Cambridge. And we actually have some family that had a condo over on Ocean City. So we headed over to Ocean City for a couple days, relaxed, got in a couple, mini workouts in just to keep my legs fresh. And then on Friday, we headed back over to Cambridge, checked in the bike, and relaxed from there for a couple hours until race morning the next day.
Okay. So whenever you actually think of the closest airports that somebody might be able to fly into there, what airports are there?
So you have Baltimore that's probably within an hour and a half of Cambridge. They can fly into Baltimore. You have all the D.C. area airports, which are maybe a little bit further. And then there is a little small airport just outside of Easton, which is only about 30 minutes away, but I'm not sure if it's if they have any commuter flights that fly in there.
Okay.
So I'd say Baltimore and Washington would be the two major.
Now, y'all got a hotel here?
Yeah. We actually stayed in Easton, which is about a 15 to 20 minute drive outside of Cambridge.
Okay, so you're not literally staying right there. You're staying a little bit outside of there.
Yeah, there aren't many major hotels right there in where the race is at. There's a lot of the locals put their houses and extra rooms up on Airbnb. So there's only one major hotel there. It's the Host Hotel, which is the Hyatt there, and it's still probably you couldn't walk to the venue from the Host Hotel. So you're gonna have to drive either way.
Oh, wow. So how is your impression of the Ironman Village here versus the one at Chattanooga?
So the local support and all that stuff was great. I will say I liked Ironman Chattanooga because we stayed at there's tons of hotels downtown Chattanooga right near the race venue. We were able to walk to things from our hotel. While I was out on the race course, the wife and kids, they went to the aquarium there. So there was stuff for people to do all day long. They went back to the hotel, relaxed for a little bit, maybe got in a swim at the hotel pool. So it was a little bit different. They couldn't do that. With this, we were staying 20 minutes away, and by the time you take shuttles and things like that. So they actually volunteered for about 7 hours on the course at the first run station. So they had a good time doing that.
Wow. So they just volunteered, being there was really nothing to do.
Yeah, like I said, they volunteered at the first run 8 station, gave out water and Red Bull and Gatorade, and I said they had a really good time.
Wow. Now, if we think of your training going into this race, did you miss any training?
Yeah, like I said, so I had after Eagleman, I had the infection, so I missed about a week and a half where, it was just really uncomfortable to run, to any type of movement. And then in July, I had we had 2 weeks vacation. We went on a cruise, and that we had already planned. And I'm actually a scoutmaster for my son's Boy Scout troop, so we had summer camp the following week. So it was 2 weeks in a row. I was able to take my bike trainer with to summer camp, so I was out there in the heat and on the bike trainer at summer camp. So I was able to get some workouts in, maybe not to the full extent that my plan called for, but I got some in. So.
Well, good. Now, I was actually kind of referring to any days that you weren't really sick, you weren't really injured, but you missed it. That's what I was kind of referring to. Did you miss anything like that?
There was maybe a day or two where maybe I didn't get the full workout in from what was on the plan. And I can't remember. It was one day my daughter does beauty pageants, and she had a pageant that she was given a title for and performing. I think I was running the audio for it, and I can't remember how many miles the bike called for, but it was late afternoon before I even got started on the bike, and I had a run after. I think it was a 6-mile run after, so I think I ended up having to cut the bike down a little bit. So it's my coach always says it's better to get in a good portion of it than not get any at all. So instead of not doing anything, I got out there and got in, most of it. So
nice. So you worked all the way up to 20 hours of training in a week. Were there any days where you just mentally didn't want to train?
There's always days that you just don't want to, train, whether it's, a long day at work or whatever, whatever it is. So, if I needed a day like that, I just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Some days I'd actually move my rest day. Maybe instead of my rest days were always on Mondays after my long training days. But, if I knew I was going to have a tough week of work or whatever, or have something going on, I'd move my rest day to another day and get in the shorter workout or on what would normally be my rest day. So
okay. Now, going into this race, did you have a meal that you wanted to get the day before the race to kind of help prepare you for the race coming up?
No, I've never been huge into carb loading or having a special meal or anything. I'm trying to even think what I even ate the day before the race. Now, I know being in Maryland, my family loves crab, except for me. I'm the only person that does not eat any crab. I do not. So I know we went to a crab restaurant. I think I ended up having some ribs or something. So they were going down on crab legs and full Maryland blue crab. But I know we had that plan going into it. But yeah, I've never been huge on the carb loading. I know Friday we Friday before lunch we sort of did a late lunch early dinner type thing. And I think I did have some pasta. So I did get some, carbs in my stomach on Friday before the race, actually. So, and topped it all off later that evening before I went to bed.
Okay. Now, I personally love crab, lobster, shellfish. I love it. I'm not going to – I love it so much, and my wife, Anne-Marie, help her. She needs to learn how to love it. But I think it's about the same kind of relationship that you have with that, and it's oh my gosh, I don't understand it. But anyway,
it's funny because I don't mind crab cake or anything like that, but just like the whole crab, I just don't care much for it. Don't mind lobster, but crab I've just never. And I lived close to. So I lived in Virginia Beach for a long time, and we used have crab at local festivals and things like that, and I just never really liked it. So
wow. So whenever you actually get in bed the night before the race, how was your anxiety level going into the race?
You always your mind runs through, did I get this done? Did I, do I have this? Is this ready? Did I have enough training? Did I have the right training? But as far as resting and being able to sleep, I actually slept pretty good. I think I got up, probably 30 minutes before my alarm was supposed to go off, and got ready and head on out the door. So going into the race, just the normal, anxiety issues. I think a lot of athletes have. So.
Okay. Now, what time was your alarm set for?
I was actually since we were outside of Easton and my family was going to have to drive in, so I actually hooked up with some other athletes. They were from upstate New York. They swung by the hotel and got me. So my alarm was set for a little after 4 a.m. and they were going to be there about 4:30, about 4:45. So I got it about 4 o'clock. So
wow. Now you were able to actually get up, get a little bit of breakfast, and get ready for the race. What did this morning ritual look like for you?
So got up and got me a little bit of breakfast. Normally I do bagels and peanut, with peanut butter and stuff on it. Grabbed a banana, ate a banana. And then on our way into Easton, so maybe about an hour later, took in some granola bar, and then right before the swim, I would take in a little bit of base salt and make sure I have my Gatorade. I'd have a bottle of water and Gatorade, and I took 2 shot blocks, the Gatorade endurance shot blocks, so right before the swim.
Okay. Now, whenever you get down to transition, you didn't have to worry about parking or anything like that, but you did want to make sure that your air in your tires was pumped up right, everything was good on your bike. How was your setting up of transition for yourself?
So, so got to transition, check my bike, make sure, where I knew where it was at, and got my tires, make sure I had those aired up. I run a X-Lab Aero bottle on the front. Then I have a 2-bottle holder on the back. I only carry 1 bottle with me. That way I can switch out water on the other bottle slot if I need to, or other Gatorade that I pick up at the aid stations. So I made sure those 2 bottles were on there and ready to go. Put my bike computer on, make sure it's picking up the satellite GPS. So just sort of just looking everything over, making sure it's where I need it at.
Okay. Now with this, you're the second person I've had on that actually says that they have 2 bottle cages, but they leave 1 empty on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You're the second person to say that.
So since I use the on-course nutrition, I don't feel like I have to carry a whole bunch of bottles. I could have probably even done without the extra bottle in the back that had Gatorade on it. Because, a lot of times once you get to transition, even if you freeze bottles, once you get to transition and put your bottles on there and go through your first bottle, by the time you get on the bike, go through your first bottle, that bottle in the back is already, starting to get warm or already warm, depending on how, the heat of the day. And me personally, I could, just grab a cool bottle that they have on the nutrition on course, so with the Gatorade Endurance.
Okay.
And then, like I said, I leave that other one open for water or another Gatorade bottle if I need it.
Right. Now, before you get started talking about the actual race here, you have a few different bags that have different items in them. What do you have in each bag?
So my run bag, of course, my shoes, sunglasses. I used a cap in case it did start getting a little bit warmer. I could throw some ice in the cap and throw it on my head. My bike bag, I actually I use it's like a sweatband or something. It just sort of keeps sweat off my head that I put on before I put my aero helmet on. Keeps them from running down in my eyes or anything like that. Shoes, I throw a little bit of baby powder in my shoes just to soak up any moisture coming off the swim. So just the normal stuff. My morning clothes bag, I'd have all my swim stuff. Since it was wetsuit legal, I had my wetsuit in there, and was able to change out the clothes that I have on.
Okay.
I did have a run special need bag and a bike special needs bag, not mainly for if I actually needed nutrition or anything like that. I did have some extra nutrition in there. Mainly, I had an extra tire, extra tube, things like that. Some moleskin in case Band-Aids if I had start getting a blister or anything that would maybe come out of the unexpected.
Gotcha. So whenever you actually start gearing up to head down to the swim start, the swim here is a little bit different. It's almost like a lollipop on the swim course, pretty much. You go out, you do 2 loops, and then you come back in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
From what I understand in years past, I don't know if they did it this year or not, but there's almost like a underwater chip timing mat. Hey, everybody, I just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast, and I just want to let you know that I've enjoyed having so many people on this show, and I couldn't really do it without your support. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and being a part of what I'm doing. If you would, take a few moments to leave me a review over on iTunes. It would help me out tremendously, and enjoy the show. From what I understand in years past, I don't know if they did it this year or not, but there's almost like a underwater chip timing mat, basically.
Yeah, starting the second loop, yeah.
Yeah, so that way they know if you started the second loop or not. They can
tell
if you did the whole swim.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the swim setup. Now, this is in salt water, so there's jellyfish. It's notorious for having jellyfish here, right?
Yeah, from what I hear, so Eagle Man didn't see or feel any jellyfish or anything like that. This race, didn't really see any jellyfish. Every once my hand would hit something, but didn't feel like a jellyfish. Don't know exactly what it was. So from all reports, from what I saw before, the jellyfish, I guess, population was somewhere else this year. So.
Oh, that's good. Now, whenever you actually get down to the rolling start, where are you seating yourself at? So
I put myself in the basically, I think it was the hour 20 to hour 30 minute time slot. So Eagle Man, I did it the 1.2 miles in 39 minutes. So I figured that would give me a little extra, leeway in there. So I went with the 120 to 130 time slot.
Okay. Now, the moments before you're actually getting in the water and you're in your corral pretty much here, you're telling your wife and kids, hey, I'll see you on the other side, basically, blah, blah, blah. All your fun stuff. I know me and my wife have a ritual. Hey, I got to give her a kiss before I get started, like all the fun stuff. So how is your anxiety, nervousness, excitedness at this point in time?
So, nervous level went up a little bit. My wife and kids weren't at the swim start. Like I said, they were volunteering on most of the day, so I let them sleep in and drive in a little bit later in the morning. I don't think they actually got to the course till about 10 a.m. I did, so putting on my wetsuit, we had, I'm on the Tri-Mafia race team also, and we had, I think, 3 members that were supposed to start the race and I was putting on my wetsuit, and we have very distinct racing kits. Everybody loves them. If you've ever seen them, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're bright.
They're bright. Yeah. We always get a lot of compliments on them. And I actually saw I stood up and was putting on my kit, and right behind me was somebody else from the team. So Jennifer, she we talked for a few minutes, hugged, and we'd never met each other before. But like I said, it definitely is great to have somebody there, sort of bring your nerve levels down just a little bit. So.
Oh, good. Now, whenever you get into your corral and you already got your wetsuit on and all this fun stuff, before you start your race, what was your mindset for the race? Did you have certain goals or expectations that you wanted to hit along the way?
So my swim, I wanted to basically, be around the 1:30 time. My bike, I was looking around about 6.5 hours. I think my normal bike time for a half Ironman is about an hour. About 3 hours. So I was giving myself a little leeway there. And then really on the run, I was looking, 6 to 6.5 hours on the run. So those were sort of my, basic goals, other than just getting it completed and getting it done in the time slot allowed it.
Right. Now, this is your first full Ironman to complete, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, so you really just wanted to get your redemption and get your first one kind of ticked off, and hey, it's an automatic PR, so it doesn't really matter too much about the times right now. Just get out there, experience it, see how your body feels. Is that about right?
I was ready to hear Mike Riley call my name out as I crossed the finish line, because he was at Chattanooga last year, and he picked or was voted to go to Maryland this year as the number one, I guess, fan favorite race. And so I was ready to hear Mike say my name as I crossed the finish line. That was the most important goal of the day. So
wow. So the cannon goes off, and you get your way up there, kind of like the penguin march all the way up to the swim start. How does the swim go for you?
Okay, so they moved the buoys a little bit from Eagleman. So at Eagleman, you could pretty much just about walk the first couple hundred yards of the swim course. This one, I noticed when we checked my bike in, I was like, man, I don't remember that turn buoy being that close to the little jetty out there. And right before the race, I'd heard that they had moved the buoys to keep people from trying to walk or stand up out on the course, or at least the first part of the course. I hit the water, and something happened to me that's never happened to me before. I had a complete, total panic attack. Really? And my chest tightened up. Of course, then all this weird, nervous stuff starts going through your head. I was like, I'm not even going to make it to the first turn buoy. I said, my day's going to be over before it even starts. And I took a minute and tried to. What do you mean you took a minute? I mean, people were going by me. I was like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. And I was like, well, I got to move my arms, because if not, I'm going to get run over. So I just started moving my arms. Like I said, the swim didn't go the way I really expected it to go. But, I just kept moving. I got through the first loop, went across the timing mat that, you sort of explained about, started the second loop. I was like, well, I'm this far already, so, I mean, might as well just keep swimming. So I probably spent about 30 to 45 more minutes in the water than what I expected. And I know I took up a lot of extra energy doing that. So,
what was your plan for this anxiety attack? Have you had a plan in the past where, hey, if this happens, I'm just going to roll over to my backstroke for a little bit, bring my heart rate down, but keep moving forward and you just kind of relax? Or did you even have a plan like this in place?
So, I did early when I first started doing triathlons, because I'm not a natural swimmer. I'd never done competitive swimming or anything. And I think I remember my first sprint triathlon, I think I ended up backstroking most of it. It was actually a pool swim, but I ended up backstroking a lot of it. So with this one, I've never had a panic attack like that. So it was just a thing of, just keep my arms moving. I didn't want to do a backstroke. I'm not proficient in backstroke as far as I'd probably been off somewhere else, over in the middle of the harbor. The kayakers would probably be dragging me back over onto the course if I was going to do the backstroke. So I stayed in front crawl. I just kept my arms moving. I wasn't the most streamlined. It was, I guess, difficult to bilateral breathe. Like I said, my chest was still tight. But, I just kept my arms moving, kept with the front crawl. And once I got to the second turn buoy, so that'd be on the backside, sort of almost if you were coming in for the final, I guess, straightaway into the swim before you start the second loop. I started getting a little bit more relaxed, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'll get the 2 laps in. I'll get the 2.4 miles in, and then we'll make it up, as the day goes on. So
how did this anxiety attack actually start? What triggered it?
It was the moment that I dove in, went from wading through the water to diving into putting my face down, and that's just what started it. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what caused it, but it's the only time it's ever happened, and knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen again.
Right. Now, whenever you get done with the swim, get out of the water, how does T1 go for you? And they're in just a touch over 10 minutes. What was this like for you?
So coming up the boat ramp, take my first steps on the concrete of the boat ramp. And, of course, I was a little wobbly. I was like, thank God it's finally over. And actually, before that coming in, the current was really, really bad pushing us. There's a small, narrow, buoys that you have to go through to get, I guess, in the slot for the boat ramp. And the current was pushing a lot of people past it. So a lot of people were having to swim, I guess, back up to get into the area to go up the boat ramp. Because I think a lot of people said, I saw a lot of reports where people had on there that they had swam, anywhere up to 500 extra yards due to the current. Wow. So I got to the boat ramp, was a little wobbly. Of course, it's being wetsuit legal. They have wetsuit strippers there. I was wearing a sleeveless, so pulled my suit down, plopped on the ground, and within a second or two, they had the wetsuit off, which is great.
Where was the strippers at? Was it on the sand there?
No, they were at the top of the boat ramp, so it's on concrete. They have carpeting down, and so you just lay down there on the carpet. They take your wetsuits off, and then you head into the changing tents.
Wow, that's awesome. So I know at Lake Placid, they actually think it's a great idea to put the wetsuit strippers on the sand and put sand in people's crotches before they go out for a nice bike ride of 112 miles.
Nah, this is, like I said, it's nice and carpeted, and it's a lot like Augusta as far as, I think the Augusta, you go a little bit further down into where they actually have the bike corral before they take your wetsuits off, if it hadn't changed since I did Augusta. But I said, they have some carpeting down, and it's on concrete, so there's no real chance of dirt or sand or anything like that getting into areas you don't need it in.
Right. So whenever you get out on the bike ride, how does the first few miles of the bike ride go?
So basically, I just wanted to take the first few miles sort of easy. First few miles there, so you're still in town, so you're getting out of town. So there's a couple turns there that you have to, make sure that you're, not taking them too wide. They normally have at least one lane shut down. They actually changed the course. I'm trying to think what day. I can't remember if the actual course was changed on Thursday or Friday, because they had about 12 miles that was flooded out on the nature preserve. So they added a sort of like a little finger, a 6 mile out and back at the front part of the course. So,
wow. Now, whenever you think of this course from a data perspective, we know it's it's pretty flat. I mean, there's maybe 20 feet of gain in all reality on the
Yeah.
entire 112 miles here. So do you have a certain heart rate number you're aiming for, a power number you're aiming for, cadence? Because with a flat course like this, you're on the pedals the whole time. People think that it's a little bit easier to have a flat course, but they don't really understand that there's no off time with the descents like on a hillier course. So it's a little bit different. So what kind of data were you looking at from a power, heart rate, cadence perspective?
So I do have a power meter on my pedals, and we sort of come up with between 120 and 130 watt power. Also, me personally, I like to keep my cadence around between 80 and 85 RPMs, and so those were the two big numbers that I was looking at. I do have a tendency, especially on flat courses, to want to go with a lower gear and just sort of a slow cadence. Yeah, just sort of grind it out. So the cadence was real big. Like I said, I wanted to stay between that 80 and 85. So every once in a while, if I start to see where I was doing that, getting down into the 70s as far as my RPMs, I would, change gears and get it back up, give my legs a little bit of a rest. So.
Okay, so you're wanting to hit 100 to 125 watts?
Yeah, between 120, 130 watts.
Okay, so that's based off of a percentage of your FTP?
Yeah, so it's based off on the percentage, and then we at Eagleman, I want to say I averaged between 130 and 135 watts for the 56 mile. So we wanted to back it off just a little bit off of that. So
okay. So what was your FTP going into this race?
So we have my FTP set at I believe it's 180.
Okay. What kind of tests did y'all do to get to 180?
So we use Training Peaks. We use the more normal 20-minute endurance FTP test that they have on there. So
okay. Now from the nutrition standpoint, when did you want to start actually consuming calories on the bike ride?
So of course I started with the Gatorade Endurance right off. I think trying to think I did, so in the changing tent, I did take in, I took in a Uncrustable, a peanut butter and jelly Uncrustable, just to go ahead and get my, some calories. Since I had it there, I went ahead and took that in. Yeah, I mean, they work great. So I took that in there in the changing tent. And then, like I said, I started with the Gatorade Endurance pretty much, within the first mile, just making sure I got some hydration in me.
Wow. My wife loves the Uncrustables. And
yeah, I did have some. I had one or two in my pockets just in case. And I think I ended up taking out on the course. I did end up taking. I think I ended up eating two of them out on the course on the 112 miles.
So did you have an aero helmet that you used for this bike ride?
Yeah. I use the Rudy Wings 57 aero helmet.
Okay. Do you like that?
Yeah. It's maybe not as comfortable as my other Rudy helmet, my just regular cycling helmet, but it seems to work pretty good. So
nice. So actually, tell me what this course looks like. Being that I've never done Maryland, and you're the first one of the series, I want you to actually tell me, if I was to do this course and look at the views and absorb the views of this course, what would I see and what would it feel like?
Okay, so the first part of it, you're basically riding and getting out of town, and then you head out to I believe the actual name of it is the Back Creek Wildlife Preserve. The course is normally, without the change that they made, is a 2-loop 56 mile out there on the nature preserve pretty much. So I mean, you can see everything from white-tailed deer to bald eagles to ospreys to what you would normally see out on the coast of on the East Coast. So it's a really beautiful course. Like I said, it's very flat. There isn't a whole lot of traffic out there, so traffic wasn't a huge issue. we did have a couple cars here and there that would come by. Now coming back in town on the second loop, you do start encountering some traffic. They have so before you start out on the second loop, they have your special needs area. They have an aid station set up at a local, it's either a high school or middle school there, so you ride through there. They have a couple timing mats there also.
Okay. Now, as far as the officials that you saw on the course, what did this look like? Did you see a lot?
Did you say officials?
Yeah.
I actually, there was a lot of people that said that they didn't see a whole lot of officials. I felt like I saw, the officials fairly often. Now, when I did, since I'm not a speed demon or anything, I don't think they were maybe monitoring the back of the Packers as closely. I think when I went through the special needs area, I want to say they already had the penalty tent, taken down. So, and like I said, I wasn't super slow, but, they had already had the penalty tent taken down. I think some other people had made comments on some of the social media platforms that they had seen the same thing, that they had seen, a lot of once the faster people got through, they had sort of taken the penalty tents down. So.
Okay. Now, as far as the quality of the road here at Maryland, being that's on the East Coast, what was this like? Was it rough roads, nice glass roads? What was this like?
I thought is fairly nice. They were out on the preserve. I wouldn't say they were rough. There was some sections there closer to town where they had recently paved that made it a whole lot, smoother, nicer ride. It's a big farming community areas out there. So they have real wide shoulders on their roads. So you could, ride right on the white line, or you could ride on the shoulder. There's some pebbles and dirt and stuff like that if you get too far over on the shoulder. But I feel like the roads were fairly nice. There was a couple, little potholes here and there. Some, I guess maybe not even potholes, but maybe deep cracks, we'll deep and wide cracks that maybe could have been marked a little bit better. But I thought it was a pretty good ride.
Okay. Now, from a data perspective, knowing that you're wanting to hit between 120 to 130 watts, what metrics were you looking at on your data screen here? Were you wanting to look at normalized power, a 310, 30-second average power, real power? What is this?
So we normally have the current power. We actually have our normalized power set up on my data screen. So that's the I guess the number that I was really going after was my normalized power.
Okay.
And then I said I run a bike computer, but also run, I have my Garmin on my wrist also. So, every once in a while I'd look at the time and see, okay, where am I at, according, as far as mileage and things like that.
Okay. Did you see a lot of flats or any wrecks on the bike course?
I saw a couple of flats, and I didn't know it until the run course. Evidently, there was somebody, because their kids were riding on chalk on the run course, that evidently they had 3 flats. Me personally, I've never had a flat in a race. I've only had like 1 or 2 flats in training. I've always been pretty lucky. From what I could tell, the bike support that they had set up, the local bike shop, did a great job. As far as, getting to people and getting them fixed up pretty quick and back out on the course. So, like I said, I didn't see a ton of mechanical issues. Crashes, I did. So when I went into changing tent for between the bike and the run, there was a guy beside of me, and I didn't really ask him, but he definitely had road rash. You could see it. It looked very uncomfortable.
He probably didn't start the race and looking like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked very uncomfortable. And I did hear, while I was out on the run course, I did hear about somebody passing out on the bike and ran into a couple other cyclists.
Wow.
So I don't know if that gentleman was involved in that, but so I did hear about a couple of crashes out on the bike.
Wow. Now, as far as the aid stations go on the bike course, did you have enough time to get a proper handoff? Were they long enough? Were they well manned? What did this look like?
Yeah, so they were the community there in Cambridge is great. They really support this race. So the aid stations were great. I felt like they were long enough. There was at times maybe the final trash area or trash drop off maybe could have been a little bit further down the road to give you a little bit more time. I did find myself, I think one time when I took in some either an Uncrustable or whatever it was, I ended up just throwing having the wrapper I put in the back of my jersey and kept it to the next aid station. I don't exactly know if what the distance between the aid stations were. They felt like they were a little bit more further apart than they were at Ironman Chattanooga. I felt like at Chattanooga they were probably every 10 to 12 miles. Sometime out there on the course, I felt like, okay, when's the next aid station coming up? Or, I hadn't seen one in a while. So I felt like they were a little bit more spaced apart. And I don't know if that's because they had to change the course at the last minute, and which was great because we still got the 112 miles in. There's not many, courses that they could change that, the night before or whatever and still, have it work out the way they did. So.
Right. Now, did you use the special needs on the bike?
I did stop in the special needs, and I think I had an Uncrustable in there, and I went ahead and grabbed it since I'd already eaten one. I wanted to have an extra one just in case I needed it. So my, stopped there for maybe a minute, if even that.
Okay. Now, in the later portion of the bike ride, 70, miles 80, miles 90, up to 100, maybe even up to 105. Mentally, how are you holding up?
The bike, that later part of the bike, there was a portion there probably between, I'm going to say, mile 90 and probably 100, maybe 105, where you're heading back into town. The winds had picked up there on that second loop, so you're getting hit by the wind. And there was a long portion there where there's just nothing to block the wind. So it was a little tough going there on those last miles. Once you got back into, say, about maybe 105, and we're getting closer to town, you're within 5 to 7 miles of town, you start having some trees and houses and things like that to sort of block the wind. You start getting more crowds in those areas. So you pick up that extra, that little extra oomph that you might need from the people cheering you on. Those miles in there at 90 to 105 were definitely a little tough. So
what was this like for you?
I think I kept all my numbers up about the same. I did hear a lot of people talking about the wind after the race and how they felt like it was a whole lot more than what they had predicted or that they had thought was going to take place. I know I heard where somebody said they were getting down into the 13 mile an hour range where they really hadn't expected to. But like I said, if it started getting tough on me, I'd make sure I back the gear off a little bit and just keep the RPMs up. If it came down to having to stand up and stretch a little bit, I think, and I want to say about mile 80, I believe I did actually get off the bike for a second or two, and I used the porta potty, used the restroom, and stretched my legs for a second, and got back on the bike. Just to sort of give myself a little bit of a break there in those last 20, 30 miles. So.
Okay. Now, whenever you start getting ready to get off the bike, the last 2 miles before you get ready to get off, are you doing anything to start preparing to start running?
So I normally I try to bring my cadence up a little bit higher, RPMs a little bit higher coming in those last couple miles, just get my legs moving a little bit more. And Of course, like I said, you're going through town, so you're starting to see more people. You're starting to get a little bit of a smile on your face. You're getting ready to get, you've been on the bike for, 110 miles already. You can't wait to get off the bike, but then you realize that, oh my God, now I got to run 26.2 miles afterwards. So, you start getting a little bit nervous. So, like I said, it's just trying to relax a little bit. And like I said, back off the gearing a little bit and get some RPMs going in your legs, maybe getting a little bit more blood flow. I maybe stood up a little bit more, trying to get some flow back down into my legs and from the seat, cutting any circulation or whatever off. So,
wow. Now, as far as transition 2, how does C2 go for you?
So transition 2, you probably have my exact number. I don't remember exactly what it was.
8 hours. 8 hours. 8 minutes and 20 seconds. 8 hours.
So, I got into the tent, racked my bike. Like I said, it's probably, I'm going to say.
You said you racked your bike?
Yeah, so they don't have bike catchers at Cambridge.
Really?
So you come into the transition area, you dismount, and you run your bike in like a normal person at a normal triathlon race.
Wow. Okay. Well, all right. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep on going.
So rack bike. I think so I was on the long end of where my bike was racked. And so it was probably, I don't know, I'd say maybe 75 yards, 100 yards to the tent, something like that. So you run, get your bag, go into the tent. I actually checked my feet, just to make sure I didn't have any blister, didn't need any moleskin or Band-Aid or anything like that. Threw my race number on, put my hat on, made sure I had my sunglasses. I think I threw some chapstick on. Got some water from the tables there in the tent, exited the tent, and got lathered up with some sunscreen there by the volunteers, and headed back out on the run. So my transitions for this race were a whole lot quicker than they were at Chattanooga. So I felt pretty good with the times on both of my transitions. They may not have been the fastest, but they were a lot faster than they were the previous year. So.
Wow. Now, did you have a specific strategy of how you wanted to execute the run? Did you and Mike go over how he wanted you to tackle the run?
So I was planning on basically running about a 12-minute pace and just, trying to do that as long as I could and see where, how far it took me. I knew whenever I came in on the bike, they told me what time of day it was. I think they said it was 3:43. So I was like, even if I had the worst run in my life, I should be able to finish a marathon before, I think the official cutoff time was like 12:11, a little bit after midnight. So I was like, I'm okay with that. Mike had actually said, you're going to want to get out and start running. He said, don't try to run as fast as you can. He said, run just a little bit faster than a walk for the first couple miles. So I start out on the run course. I look down at my Garmin, and I think I'm right about like a 10-minute mile or something like that. So that was even faster than what I had wanted to run. So I was like, okay, I need to slow down a little bit. So I slowed it down, and basically, like I said, I ran the first 6 or 7 miles, a little bit faster than a walk. And it's sort of the run course is sort of weird. So you had a couple of turnarounds there. You passed the start finish line like 6 times before you actually even get to go into the finish chute. So, I really didn't start getting, I guess, bad off. Mile 18 to 20, I was like, okay, this is, a little bit tougher. Maybe I'm going a little bit slower than I want to. At that point, I had pretty much started, okay, I'm going to run, 3/4 of every mile, or, whereas before I was going to run each mile and walk the aid station. Is what the plan that Mike and I had come up with. So that sort of turned into, okay, I'm going to run 3/4 of a mile and walk a quarter. I did that for a while. And then basically those last 6 miles, it been out there a long time. It'd been a long day already. I think some of the extra effort that I put out on the swim, spending an extra 30, 45 minutes on the swim, it was starting to come back and haunt me a little bit. So then at that point, I was just like, all I need to do is get in there, just get the mileage done, get those last 6 miles done. And I just started counting down, okay, this is a 10K. I can run 10K any day. And then when I got to mile 23, I was like, okay, we're down to, 5K. All I got is this last little bit left. I said my wife and kids were out on the run course at the first mile marker. So I think I saw them maybe 4 times before they started heading towards the finish line. So that was good. No, they didn't give me any chapstick. No, okay. I didn't take any aid from them. I did get a kiss from them. Got a kiss from my daughter and my wife, and my son was there. So I got to see them a couple times. My daughter ended up giving me a glow bracelet as the sun started going down. She gave me a glow bracelet on one of my last loops. And then I actually I saw them on my very last turnaround, right before the finish line. They were heading into the sort of the finish line chute area there to cheer me in. So
now, what was this like as a dad, seeing your kids watch you do this?
So throughout the run, I was like, I'm gonna get into this finish line chute. I'm like, and tears are just gonna start streaming down my face because like I said, I didn't finish last year, and it felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. Last year when I had to make the decision to hang it up for the day, it was like the worst because I've always, preached to my kids, if you start something, finish it, you just do your best. And last year that day, it just wasn't. I just didn't feel like it was my best. So I felt the weight of my shoulders, and I was like, they're going to be there. They're going to be, cheering me on. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold it together as I come into the chute. So, there's a lot of mixed feelings, getting in those last couple miles.
Wow. Because in a sense, it's like you went from being a failure at Chattanooga. I know that's how I would feel if I had.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother emotion level there. Pulling the cord is obviously something that's very hard to do in that situation. And then now fast forward to Maryland, they're actually on the course volunteering, watching you kind of have the wheels fall off a little bit where you have to walk more and more. They're obviously tracking you along the way and getting the splits going, well, he got a little slower, but he's still going forward.
Yeah.
So how was this like for you, knowing that, hey, yeah, you're still going to get it and it's going to be a finish?
So, last year after Chattanooga, the car ride home was really, really silent. They were with me last year also. The car ride was silent. I had, at that point, Mike, my coach, he had actually run Chattanooga. He was at Chattanooga and he raced it also. And he had sent me a message on the car ride home. He was like, well, he was trying to figure out what happened. And I started sort of filling him in because, I was having knee issues, month prior. And so I was talking to him. And at that point, I'd already said, as much pain I'm in right now, I've got to, have this redemption. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do to get across that finish line. And, it was probably, Chattanooga was on a Sunday. We came home Monday. It was probably Tuesday before my wife was like, so what's the plan? And we sort of did it timidly. And so I was like, well, I said, I've already talked to Mike. And I said, I've got to get it done. So like I said, you're right. I felt like I sort of, let everybody down because, you put money and you put time and time away from family into these races. And when you have to pull out, that close to the finish line. 13 miles was all I had left to do. And, it was a tough pill to swallow last year. So I was, on those last couple miles, you're just like, okay, here it is. I got it done. I feel redeemed, and so just coming down that final couple blocks or whatever was great.
Wow. Now, whenever you actually started getting towards miles, say 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, those middle miles, where were you at mentally? Were these miles pretty hard for you because the sun's starting to set a little bit? You're getting to get into the later miles where your feet are probably starting to hurt, maybe even swell, and they bring out the chicken broth. They start bringing out the glow sticks like you mentioned. How are you doing mentally?
Okay, so up until mile 13, I was like, let's just keep getting the miles going. After mile 13, I almost felt like, there was almost a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulder because I still kept track of what time it was in the evening. Okay, how many more hours do I have to complete these last 13 miles? I think at that point it was mile 13 or somewhere there in the middle. It was, a little bit before 7 o'clock in the evening. So at that point I had, 5 miles left, 5 hours left to do 13 miles. And once I hit that 13 mile marker, that was where I had to pull out last year. That's where I had to pull the plug last year. And so, as I got past that 13 mile mark, I almost felt a little bit of relief because I still felt fairly good. I knew I still had the amount of, enough time to get these last 13 miles in, even if I had to, walk the last 13 miles. So I felt a relief. Once I got to the mile 20, I was like, if I had to, I would crawl the last 6.2 miles to get across the finish line if I had to. And as I got further and further in the evening, I actually got a little bit more relaxed because I knew I would be able to, I was going to make it, before the cutoff, and I was going to be able to get through down the chute and hear Mike call my name out. So
wow. Now, knowing that this is a looped course here, you literally go by the turn to go to the finish line how many times?
I think I want to say it's 4 or 6 times. Yeah, because you actually you do 2 lollipop loops, and then so that takes you by the course, I guess 4 times there. And then you actually come back and then you do another almost like turnaround at like mile, right past the aid station where my wife and kids were working at. So it's probably mile 1.3 or something. And then you come back in for the final time.
Wow. So what was it like whenever you took the way to the finish line versus going out on the next loop? What was that emotion like?
So that last, I guess maybe quarter of a mile where, you do the turnaround. There's a turnaround right near a brewery there. So there's fans on both sides. They're cheering you on. You go through this intersection and there's a police officer directing traffic at this intersection, and right past him is the volunteer, and you see the signs that say, for the people, second and third loop or whatever, and then they have another lane that's, the final, this is your final, and they're telling you, okay, if this is your final loop, head over here to this lane. So you hit that final loop, and as you're running down the last little portion, I was trying to, of course, I wanted to, have a good picture, and I wanted to, come across the finish line and make sure, I guess somebody behind me didn't, try to sprint that last little bit and I guess ruin, my picture or ruin, the time with my family that I had coming down the chute or whatever. So, I was actually looking ahead of me and looking at the people in front of me and making sure I had enough space between myself and them. And I was looking behind me and making sure I had space behind me. And then you start seeing the bright lights, of the finish line chute. Of course, you've been hearing the people all day long. You've been hearing Mike Riley. You could, even from the bike transition when you're coming in, you could hear him, yelling out people's names, for those, super fast people that were getting done with the race when you're just now starting your marathon. So, So it's definitely exciting.
Wow. So as you're actually entering the chute where the barricades are starting to line up, the lights are obviously there at the finish line. You can hear the excitement of the music, and then you actually start getting onto the red carpet. What was your finish line experience like?
So I get on the red carpet, and I had no idea where my wife and kids were going to be at. They didn't know how close they were going to be able to get, if they were going to be able to get up to the barricades. And so I was on the carpet trying to find them. The lights are just blaring in your eyes. You can't really see much. I didn't even see Mike Riley. I run past my family because I thought, okay, I'm going to, go to my wife and kids, give them all hugs, kisses, and before I actually, get to the final, through the arches there. And so I'm running down there. I'm looking, trying to see if I can see them, and I run right past them. Wow. And I hear the name, and I can hear my daughter. When you spend so much time with your family, you over all the people cheering. I heard their voices, and I was like, okay, do I go back and give them hugs? Do I go back to them? But I just kept running, and I heard them. I didn't go back. I kept down, going down the carpet. There's people on both sides, holding out their hands for, high fives. And, I gave a couple people high fives. I could hear Mike Riley. He was announcing. I didn't hear him call my name. I know he did because I got the video, but, it's almost like another, worldly thing. I never saw him. I don't even know where he was at. I think he was on one side before you even crossed the finish line. So I never even saw him, and but it was still a great experience. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. So
wow. So after you finish, what'd you do next?
So I go through. There's great volunteers there to catch you. I mean, I really felt pretty good. My legs didn't have any problems with my legs. My knees, I didn't have any problems with. I felt pretty good. You get your medal put around your neck. They give you all your finisher hat and your finisher shirt, and get you, water, some nutrition if you need it. And then they take you over to the photo area, get your photos made. Before that, my wife and kids had actually come down the barricades and was right there. I went over before I got my photo taken and gave them hugs and kisses, and got my photo taken. And they met me on the other side of the barricades once you go through the chute and get your photo taken and all that stuff. And I sat down on the curb and, just sort of took it all in. And I was, I got it done. I got all 140.6 miles done. So I sat there for a few minutes. Of course, my wife and kids, they were like, okay, can we get you anything to eat? Are you hungry? Do you need anything? Yeah. And so, I was just like, nah, I just want to sit here for a second. And so I took my shoes off. I was like, I need to get my shoes off. And then I realized how bad I stunk. And, and so, I just sat there for a few minutes and just sort of took it in. So,
wow. So did they say they were proud of you?
Oh yeah. Throughout the whole day. I mean, to them, it wouldn't have mattered if I, would have, stopped at the first aid station and hung it up whenever I saw them. They're always proud of me. My son, he's like, you're crazy. I can't believe you do something like this. Anytime, even during training runs or training, he'd be like, you just did what? He'd just be waking up on a Saturday morning. I'm like, well, I've already, I've been up since such and such time, and I've already gone out for a 70-mile ride, and oh, by the way, I'm going to go for a 6 or 7 mile run or whatever. So I think it amazes them of I guess what you can accomplish if you really put in the time and dedication and training for it. So
wow. So why do you even do this sport to begin with?
So I played sports all my life. I wrestled, soccer, baseball. I was always athletic. Don't ever remember a time when I wasn't. I was actually born with a bone condition where all the bones in my legs were turned inward. I wore braces for the first couple of years of when I was learning to walk, and they actually are the bones, I guess, in my hip. They were able to straighten from my knees down, so there's still a little. I guess the bones in my hips are not turned exactly the way they're supposed to. So I've always had some leg issues here and there throughout my life. I've had knee surgery. But I'd gotten to the point in 2013 where once again, the position I had at work was I was sitting a lot. I was gaining weight. Overall, I just didn't feel good. And I needed to come up with something to, sort of, get me active, get me motivated. And I had run a couple like mud races, like Spartan races here and there. And I'd sign up for it. And about a month before was when I would start working out. I'd go to the gym and get on the treadmill a little bit, lift some weights and this, that. So, it was actually Super Bowl Sunday, 2013. I was like, this is crazy. I was sitting at a Super Bowl party. I had a plate full of chicken wings and dip and whatever else. And earlier in the day, they were doing a story on, I believe it's Tom Brady or something. And they were just talking about how he trains all year long. A week after the Super Bowl, he's back in the film room or he's back in the weight room. He's training, and that's how he's able to keep his performance up. So I came up with this thing. I was like, I'm going to run some type of race every single month for 12 months, and I'm going to finish it with a full marathon. And so I did that. I did that in 2013. My first race I signed up for was like 2 weeks after I made the decision. It was like the end of February. So Super Bowl Sunday was the first or second week of February, and it was the end of February. And I about died. It was a 5K, and I about died. And I think my finish time was like 36 minutes and something. But I ended up, like I said, I kept running. Went to, okay, I'm going to do 5Ks to, I'm going to complete all the Spartan races the distances that they had at that time. Then it went to, okay, I'm going to do a half marathon, and then I'm going to do a marathon. So I did the Disney World marathon. We're a Disney family. My kids were young. We planned this huge, had a huge vacation in Disney World. I did the marathon there in January 2014. And then I was like, well, after I did the marathon, I was like, what am I going to do next? I mean, I've been training for almost a year or a little over a year. I've got to do something else. And I don't even remember how I came up with the whole triathlon thing. I don't know it. I mean, it's not like we're a huge triathlon community, especially the town I live in. I only know maybe a couple of triathletes that are, live really close to me. And, but I come up with this triathlon thing. So the first year I did sprints, and then I was like, well, let me do a half Ironman. So I trained to do a half Ironman, and then I did Augusta in 2015. So I guess it all, stemmed from there. So.
Wow. Now, looking back on it, if you could change anything about your race, what would you change?
The Maryland race?
Yeah.
I think, of course, the swim, I would, if I had to do the swim all over, I'd have probably, which I did at Eagleman, I didn't get a practice swim in there at the actual race course. I think that even though, like I said, I swam the same body of water just several months ago, and I think that maybe would have eased some of the anxiety a little bit. Like I said, we were out in Ocean City. I was actually supposed to have a swim, just a little, I think 10 or 15 minute swim a couple days before, and the water was really, really bad out in the ocean as far as being, really choppy and really rough. So I didn't get that swim in. I wish even if I would have got a pool swim in somewhere there in Ocean City, I think that would have been a whole lot better than no swim at all. So definitely, I wish I had the swim to do over again. I think maybe I could have probably pushed it a little bit more than I did on the run. But like I said, at that point, I just I just wanted to make sure that I got across the finish line. I didn't want to do anything that would, cause me to, injure myself or my knee to, something happened to one of my knees or anything like that. So I think I could have maybe pushed myself a little bit more on the run. The bike, I was fairly, like I said, I was fairly happy with. Of course, you always would want it to be a little bit faster, but I guess given the winds and like you said, it's a flat course. I mean, it's a little bit different than Chattanooga because, you do have some hills, but you got a lot of, downhills, and you can get a lot of speed on some of those downhills at Chattanooga. So on a flat course, when you stop pedaling, you stop moving. So it doesn't take very, very long to slow down.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Now, how can Ironman have made your race experience here better?
I thought the race experience was great. The community was great. Ironman seems to always do a really good job of making sure you got what you need. The only thing I would really like, so last year at Chattanooga, my kids got to do an Iron Kids run. They had one of those there. They didn't have one in Chattanooga. I wish Ironman would do that at all the races. I don't know if they do them at most of the races or if it's up to the sponsors or what it is. But I would say something for the kids to do in the days leading up to it. I think if we would have had other stuff to do within the Ironman Village and things like that, we would have maybe stayed in Cambridge and not gone to Ocean City or maybe gotten an Airbnb that was close by, so we could spend a little bit more time there at the actual Ironman Village and doing Ironman related activities.
Okay, well, Kevin, we've covered quite a bit about your race. Do you have anything else you want to add?
You can follow me on my social media. I'm at Carolina Runner. And like I said, I'm just a regular average, age grouper that, wife and 2 kids work and I just have a good time with it. I don't know what's next. I'm actually contemplating doing a sprint triathlon this weekend. I still have till Saturday to decide. And so I guess, we'll see.
Wow. So what races are on your bucket list?
I was actually looking at some of them today. I don't know. Right now, I don't know if another full iron distance is on my immediate list. The marathon isn't really my favorite distance. Of course, I always look at proximity. So, I'm looking at Ironman just acquired. Now they're going to have Ironman Virginia, which is in Williamsburg. I used to live up in that area. My sister still lives in the Virginia Beach area. So that's, only 45 minutes from my sister's house. So that's on my maybe immediate list in May. Ironman North Carolina 70.3 is fairly, close by. They had some weather issues this year. They canceled the race in like a week or two due to the hurricane. So that's on my list. But I think if I did another full distance, maybe Florida or Louisville.
Wow. Well, I'm actually going to Louisville, so I actually get firsthand experience this year up there. So, Kevin, to kind of conclude here, I always ask the same question to everybody their first time on, and that's, what's your definition of a perfect race?
I think the definition of a perfect race would be to go out, have fun, enjoy the day, even with the ups and downs that a long race like this, has in it. Thank the people that are out there. They're giving their time. I've seen athletes that are just, ugly to volunteers in races before. They're out there to support you. And just remember, this is, it's sort of maybe cliche or something, but, you signed up for it, enjoy it. You paid a lot of money to do this. You pay a lot of money for training, equipment, things like that. So, if you're not having a good time doing it, then there really isn't any reason to be out there because I said, even with the trials and tribulations that come with a long course distance like the Ironman, it's you still have fun with it, and still have a good day at the end of the day. So.
Wow. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on, spending some time with me today. I've enjoyed hearing about your race and getting to know you and your why a little bit more and getting to really hear about your redemption. It's been great. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I've enjoyed it.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It was great talking to you. Great, I guess, reflecting back on my day. It's we sort of got right back into the swing of things with work and family stuff. So it's good to just get a little bit of a downtime and actually think about what actually went on that day, what was accomplished that day. So.
Wow. Well, you're more than welcome, and I look forward to following you in the future. Okay.
I appreciate it, Terry. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.